I was staring so intently in one direction that I never realised what I was or what was around me. And I totally lost the idea of me, really. These sorts of things rip you apart. They shatter you into 1,000 pieces. And these pieces become separated from each other, from you. I didn't see the point in what I was doing. I'd lost my faith in everything. In me, actually. There was nothing left. So I left to see if I could find, I don't know. I guess there was just nothing left to hold on to, nothing to hold me. So I went off from where I was lost to get lost and try and find something else that I didn't even know if it existed or if there was anything to find at all. I gave away or sold 95% of everything I owned. My whole existence had been dwindled down to 9 or 10 boxes. I went off to meet people, and they told me their stories. And these became my Ithaca, my nowhere land.
Claro. Y yo sufrí, la única violencia que no sufrí fue la violencia sí, en el tema de violación, como tal, como te digo, sensual, que aquí no se da. Pero sufrí todos los tipos de violencia. Sí. Todos los tipos de violencia, sí, agresión de parte del hombre, de la misma comunidad como tal. Yo para hoy decir lo que siento, tuve que pasar por muchos procesos. Me acuerdo que la primera vez que me di cuenta que yo primero debía trabajar mucho a mi autoestima, fue en un espacio que me invitaron a unas...
Breathe. Just breathe. Open your eyes and breathe. There's nothing to be afraid of. Find me, my love, and touch this brave new world.
This is a new beginning for me. I don't know nothing about life. I know very good about army, about the life in army. About how it's to be a soldier. It's a very big system, the army, but it's like outside is a different world, and it's a new beginning.
Yeah. Is that why the actual travelling is important, almost the way that sense of change coming from what was?
I think so. Well, I told you yesterday, in Israel it's like a ceremony, you know, when someone finished the army, going to travel, to clean his head, to see the world. Most of the people don't.
We are in our nowhere lands, my dear, and all these things you held so near, all these things you felt for us, now lie dormant, tormenting, but powerless. Remember the laughing, the singing and the playing. Remember the pain, the sorrow and the loneliness. We are all children, defenseless and open. Forget the destruction and the madness. Leave them behind and move on to new beginnings. These structures that we built have all fallen. Leave them where they lay. Leave them in peace. These are such things as dreams are made on, and our lives are rounded, with a sleep held, till our eyes open. The tears have dried, and there is nowhere left to drown. There is nothing else to hold, nothing to hold us, only that, and that is all.
Right after being sentenced, I recognized that this is the person I was that led me to being incarcerated was not the person that I actually was. And I also recognize that the system really wasn't designed for me to leave those walls a better person than I was. Actually, the exact opposite. And there was something in me that just, I wanted to defy that. I wanted to leave that place, and in a much better place, and really have some direction, where I wanted my life to go, who's the person I need to be. And so that's probably the very beginning of me accepting who I am.
In academia, we use the word nationalism or nationality. Nationalism to describe all the national processes and identity, but in popular language it's usually relating to extreme nationalistic behaviors. But for me, standing in the detention was already partially an extreme experience, and I didn't really like it. And in Poland there are nationalistic songs that have words like "No German will spit in our faces" or "Germanize our children," and they wanted to make me sing it. And I kind of, when I wasn't standing up at the detention, once the school director came to me and said, "Why are you not singing, not standing in the detention? Are you not a real Pole?" And I said, "No, I'm German." And she left me alone.
Well, that's kind of the point of colonialism, isn't it? Because it's like you come from somewhere you think you're more developed and all things, and you start looking at the other as a miserable poor guy that doesn't have all I got, so he needs to be civilized, and that's bullshit, because you're like trying to pace your way of doing and living and to someone that maybe has his own mechanism and his own whole point of view. Even in the poor villages called the village or neighborhoods that are called Bisha. They have their own way. It might be very extremely violent in a lot of different ways, but a lot of people that gets to a job or gets to the job market and all the stuff, they don't want to leave their neighborhoods. They want to work, but they want to live there because they have their own kind of culture that it's different from the middle class or the higher class.
I was at high school here in Rapa Nui, and I was raised by my grandmother. You get to a point sometimes that you wonder about things or doubt things. So I was like, I say, if she needs help, with things in the house, maybe I should stay home and, farm, take care of our cattle and things like that instead of just going to school. And, I didn't see the future of it. And I got out of school, and then I was like 15, 14, 15, 16, yeah, around that. And she sent me to California to study English and try to see something else, and hopefully for the better that I will, you know what I mean?
And how has that changed you?
I mean, you realize, you see what you what you were born into, you like Rapa Nui, a small island, so far away from anything, you know, very far. We learn we're Rapa Nui, but also you have to, in a way, you have to say you're Chilean when you're in the airport with a passport, which I'm not. So you learn a lot of these things that you have to say that you are not. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I can say, you know, I'm whatever. But you learn these things, and over there you see a lot of those things too, you know, and you learn, and you see that it's a part of humanity, you know, humanity. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of things they're just saying, they're not real.
Bueno, nuestros antepasados fueron raptados en el continente africano en calidad de esclavos sometidos por el yugo español, donde fueron traídos al primer puerto libre negro, que era en Cartagena, de India, y de ahí donde distribuían los negros para los diferentes países y diferentes lugares de América y Colombia como tal. Entonces es ahí donde Benco, el cual fue un gran líder, el cual lideraba un grupo de 25 negros más, donde ellos pues organizan liberarse de ese yugo español, pero el problema es que había un obstáculo, y era que como había negros de los diferentes lugares de África, pues todos no manejaban una misma lengua o un mismo idioma, y es a partir de ahí donde surge como alternativa libertaria la lengua palenquera. Se forma de la fusión de lengua netamente africana, específicamente el kikongo y el kimbungo, que son lenguas bantúes de África. Y es ahí, a partir de ahí, donde estos negros logran ponerse de acuerdo, logran crear las estrategias para escapar del yugo español al cual se encontraban sometidos, y es cuando deciden tomar la ruta que hoy por hoy conocemos como San Basilio de Palenque, y es cuando salen de Cartagena y se refugian en este valle buscando pues todo el tema de su libertad, para ellos poder desarrollar todas sus prácticas ancestrales y poder ser libres. Y es cuando llegan acá a Palenque y forma el palenque de San Pablo.
Que mi bisabuelo fue esclavo. Él fue esclavo de la familia Cartagena, que era una familia española que tenía minas en la población de Marmato Caldas.
¿Qué año?
Creo que es 1850 y algo o 70 y algo, pero fue solo en su juventud, porque rápidamente él consiguió su libertad y en circunstancias poco conocidas se dice que él consiguió su libertad porque la familia Cartagena era benevolente y decidieron dejar libres a todos sus esclavos. Él fue a vivir a una población cercana a la población de donde es mi papá. Entonces mi bisabuelo conoció a una mujer de la población indígena, creo que es del grupo de los Emberachami, que es una población, una comunidad indígena muy popular en Colombia. Y ellos dos tuvieron, creo que 5 hijos más o menos, 5 o 6 hijos. Y uno de esos hijos es mi abuelo. Y mi abuelo heredó el apellido de la familia que esclavizó a mi bisabuelo. Y es la razón por la que yo tengo el apellido Cartagena.
Muhammad Ali cambió el nombre de Cassius Clay. La razón para él fue Cassius Clay, which is slave name. ¿Tú sientes alguna vez similar o no?
Creo que no siento que deba cambiar mi apellido, porque mi apellido ahora tiene una significancia, un significado diferente. Hace parte de la historia. Demuestra que sí, que mi bisabuelo y que los papás de mi bisabuelo fueron extraídos de su tierra de manera injusta y que yo debo recordar eso. O sea, mi apellido es una especie de memoria, es una especie de recuerdo. Además, no sé por qué otro apellido podría cambiar el mío.
Sí, claro, es que ahí hay una esclavitud o esclavización cuando te discriminan. Porque yo soy libre, pero si voy a Cartagena me burlan por mi pelo o por mi color de piel o por mi ropa. Entonces yo digo, bueno, yo mejor no voy a Cartagena porque me van a discriminar. Entonces allí ya estoy siendo nuevamente esclavizado, por decirlo así, porque estoy huyendo a esas personas que discriminan, que son racistas, ¿no? Y eso pasó con la lengua. Mucha gente dejó de hablar la lengua porque tenía miedo a que lo burlaran, ¿ya? A que lo discriminaran. Entonces eso te atiene a no hablarla. Y si tú eres libre y tú no puedes salir porque te van a discriminar, estás siendo esclavizado, ¿no? Realmente.
It's control, as you said. Men are trying at least to control the women. Also, you walk in the street and people are looking at, men are looking at women like objects and saying stuff on the street.
How does that make you feel?
Horrible. I hate it. But I never know whether to stop and say something or if it's better just to annoy it. Where are you gonna, how are you gonna make it stop? By stopping and yelling at them and telling them that it's not okay, or just to annoy it? And
I mean, if you did stop and say something, what do you think the reaction would be?
Wow, I don't know. I think they would be surprised if a girl stops up and actually start saying something, because I don't think they're used to people responding to what they're saying. I think most people are just pretending like nothing.
Do you think they're even aware of it?
That they're doing it?
That they're doing it, or that it's sort of wrong and makes you feel uncomfortable?
No. I think a lot of people are not aware. Because it's got something to do with education as well. Like they just don't, they were never taught differently. They were never taught differently. Most people who do it are the people on the street. They're the people who
Hoy todo el mundo le resuelve problemas de todos esos espacios organizativos. Hoy esas mujeres que me hacían chisme, que yo tuve como 10 maridos, yo tuve como 10 hombres. Y el tema de la dignidad aquí en Palenque, eso está en la frente. Esto y esto es igual para una mujer palenquera. Parece que lo que tenemos aquí lo tenemos marcado en la frente. Para la sociedad palenquera, en esos años, hace unos 10 años, cualquier acción que tú hicieras, eso era tan indigno para ti como mujer. Y había sanciones, señalamientos y habladuría, que si no estabas preparada para quedar en esta sociedad te tocaba irte. Hoy todas esas muchachas fueron entrando, quieren ser como yo, comenzaron a estudiar. Pues te cuento que yo fui la primera palenquera que con 5 hijos emprendió ese camino del estudio. Me decían, me gritaban, cuando yo iba en la moto o iba con la libreta a hacer tarea, plátano maduro no vuelve a verde. ¿Tú sabes lo que quiere decir eso? Yo después de vieja, yo según que estoy vieja,
No puedes regresar.
no podía estudiar. Deja eso para tus hijas. ¿Te imaginas cómo yo me sentía? Hoy es raro una mujer palenquera con hijo o sin un hijo que no esté estudiando. Todas en el sentido del 100%, el 95% están estudiando. Hoy todas han entendido que nosotras no somos fuertes solo para mantener una punchera en la cabeza. Hay otra forma de trabajo.
And it's so weird, but many people, I work with them. You know, I have another work, so for a long time I tried to be like a sexual teacher. It's weird because when you go to a high school and say, I want to talk about this, blah, 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 they are like, yeah, please come, show them the condom, talk about this, blah, 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 and they are really open. But it's not like a political position, or I don't know how to say. In the government, they don't want to talk about it, you know? So you need something with money of the government and with people who study that and without all the Catholicism behind. And that doesn't exist. And here is like, when you have a gay, for example, a gay manifestation, all the church pay for many buses to come all over the country, people to say, we are against gays, you know? But they pay, they use money to do that, you know? It's incredible. And you have like 30 gays and lesbians there, persons, and a lot of people.
It must be difficult to come out.
Yeah, it's difficult to come out, and also many people goes there just to have fun, you know? My students say to me, like, we just go there because they pay and we want to go out of school, you know? It's not like, we hate gays, you know? It's just, they move all these people. Some of them are ideological, with these ideas and blah, 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 against gays and lesbians. But most of them are like, we just go there, you know? And it's so stupid.
I think there's a problem actually in England as well.
You think?
For education, sexual education. And England has the highest.
I was drawn to extremist Jesus camp religion.
Okay.
Like everything was praying in the spirit, speaking in tongues, prophesying, things like that. I had some friends who were interested in that, and I was very drawn into that for about 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
It was, but nothing ever worked for me. Like I tried to be baptized with the Holy Spirit. I tried to speak in tongues. I tried, and I confessed like all my sins, and I fasted. I prayed. I did everything that I thought possible to serve Jesus. When it didn't work, I kind of like, oh, why is this not working for me? Why is this not working for me? After the frustration and the persistence had kind of worn off, I started questioning, is this even real? Is this even truth?
When you say it didn't work, what were you expecting to happen?
I was expecting to have... It's a good question.
I don't know if that's possible.
I don't really know. I wanted my life to be filled with, I don't know, a love for Jesus or something. I don't know. I kind of forget why I wanted to, what I was looking for. And as that kind of wore off, I started questioning, is this even real? And I read a lot of books, talked with people, and that kind of initiated some changes away from Christianity, from the Christian religion.
And how old were you? Would you have been at that point?
I was 19.
19?
19, yeah.
Oh, so it is just before you would have gone to university? I presume you went to university and high school, 19, 20?
20, yeah. Yep. Then I went to university, and I was very fascinated by the classes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and the environment. I totally love the environment.
Because that would have probably been not exactly the first experience of complete sort of difference, but to actually be living within a completely different environment.
Yeah, and I handled it very well. So you get to biology.
If you don't say so yourself.
If I don't say so myself, I handled it very well.
Humility is always a good word.
We got to biology classes where they're teaching evolution, and I was firm creationist. That was like the only science that I understood. It was like creationist, fundamental, apologist, everything like that. And I just kind of sat back and, that's very interesting. But I didn't change my beliefs about it. I did the coursework, and I just absorbed the information. And as time went on, I kept on just keeping an eye out for contradictions to my beliefs, and just weighing evidence, weighing beliefs, opinions, what made sense, what didn't make sense.
You're put in prison, you've got no criminal record.
Right.
No one was hurt. There was the weapon wasn't fired.
Right.
Wasn't even cocked. And yet you were given a sentence of 14 years with a minimum of 7. 7 or 8?
7.
7. I mean, look, to be honest, I mean, I can only talk about my own. It seems a little bit extreme.
You think? It's quite extreme. But I think this is one of the policies of mandatory minimum sentences. So there are certain crimes that have a minimum sentence attached to it, and the judge has no discretion on that. If you're charged and convicted of this crime, this is the sentence that you get. Not taking into consideration any mitigating factors. Yeah. So
if you had a lawyer, if your family had a lawyer, do you think you would have been convicted?
The short answer to that is no. I'm pretty certain that I wouldn't. I'm pretty sure that I would not have. I think one of the really interesting things about this case is there were 3 white guys that were involved. And once they had the 2 black guys, there was no effort put towards finding the white guys.
Really?
So when we talk about race, it's like, the black guys are the ones that are at fault. And mind you, we probably played the more significant role in the act, but they also had this thing in with laws in North Carolina that's in concert. So if you are if you're aware of a crime being committed and you're with that person, then you're just as guilty as the persons that are committing the crime. And that wasn't necessarily the case. They were pretty much involved as well.
So what happened to them?
I was the only person that knew who they were. But my thought, because this is North Carolina, this is the U.S. in a very racist country, is that they had no interest in really finding out who the white guys were, because when white guys are a part of some crime, I think most of the time that black folks when they do something wrong, this is just part of who they are. They're criminal by nature, and and when black teenagers do something wrong, this is just who they are. when white teenagers do something wrong, oh, they made a bad decision, you know, they made a mistake. You know, and it's really interesting how that plays out. I think I have a very different vantage point too, because like a lot of my friends during that time were white, and so I hung out with, you know, and that group of people that we hung out with were pretty diverse. It was a pretty mixed group of people. And so I know friends that, you know, shot guns into, well, white friends that shot guns into vehicles, and, you know, where people were, you know, with people in them, and, you know, they got off. Whereas, like, you know, I honestly believe that if this happened with, you know, one of my black friends, they would not get off. Like, they would throw the book at them. You know, no matter what their background or history was, you know, the fact that they were black was justification for, you know, treating them as if they were some cold-blooded, no feelings, no consideration for anybody else, like just.
We are the monsters, the cyclops, the sirens, the Lysagonians that stand in our way. We bring them inside our souls and they stand in front of our journey. How can we not revert back to what we know, to our wars, to the only things we have seen or can even imagine? And yet we must. It is the monster that I am, that I have created, and it is my destiny that I have placed in front of myself, in front of you, in front of all. No longer seeing the mirror or the reflection, only the monster, cut and separated from ourselves, an endless circle running from the cyclops that is me, you that is us. We are stuck within our machines going round till finally we are blinded again. I now live within this machine, this mega machine that I fuel. This system that I blindly fed has now grown from my influence and now directs me. Too large to conceive, to control, I can only wait to be devoured. We have fed this machine, this mega machine that consumes, and all that now remains from our beginnings is our faith. I turn from this and face such beauty as to get lost in the illusion of our mega machine. I am this. This is the machine. This is the cyclops. I am the monster, but I can only see salvation. No one is hurting me, I scream to myself, to you, to all. Our monsters roar as we tear and absorb each other, as we consume ourselves. I am the monster, the cyclops imprisoning and feeding on you, on them, on me. And yet, there is hope. There is always hope, as there is light and love, even in the darkest recesses of our souls. Too dark to see, we look for the gods. More reflections cut and search for home, in spite of our destiny. I turn to myself, to the cyclops, to fulfill your name, my name, our name, Odysseus, the one that feels pain, tormented by the gods to fulfill your, my, know our journey home.
There's certain things that happen with my family. That is, my father used to work for the Chilean Navy as a surgical doctor. But he deserted that Chilean Navy because he saw when the first Chilean Navy came here, he saw what they were doing to the people here.
What were they doing?
Well, in a way, they were treating the people like slaves again, on their own piece of land. He operated, without authority from anyone else. He went out and he helped people.
Is that why they basically kind of court-martialed him, because he was helping?
Yes, and for them it's like desertion. He deserted his post, right? So what happened was, they dressed him up in his uniform, they arrested him, and the last thing that my father did was take off his stars from his
lapels, I guess they call it.
The uniform coat that you have. He took off his stars, he handed them in, and he said, I don't want anything to do with this. They arrested him, they took him back to the mainland, and he was put in jail for around 5-6 years.
What sort of year, when was this?
This was 1960, 61, 62, 63, around there. And there were certain political things that were happening in the mainland.
Yeah.
There was a coup going on in Chile.
Well, Pinochet was on his way, wasn't he?
Right. There was a coup going on, and all this kind of ties out to us going to England, because my father was not allowed to practice being a doctor anywhere else, though he came back, but he had scars of what happened. So my father came back, he gathered us, and he said, okay, well, I need to go, I need to work. And not just my father, many other people they started to, they asked the rest of the world for help, and they immigrated to other parts of the world. USA, Canada, Europe, England. So England, what happened was England said, okay, you can come as refugees, and that's what happened to us. And that's why we went to England.
Pero grave era me o me está grave?
Me grave hoy con me amo moto, pero al final ina kai roba moto, ina kai tiang. Kuhakai ano mai mau puru ya aweri tora ko Alfonso. Puru airo te oficina. Esta hi oficina. Ya. Hema ufeo reunión ne tu apa. Ya hema ufeo tu. He mautisipi haka puatu ki te hao opani, haka e mea Alfonso ki runga moto mauatu ki he hoi kai i te mei tāu. Pura ngā vi me o te kona e rei o ha. E o hoi te ngā vi ki runga tō mea Alfonso. Aru tai pere ei, kuno tai e te ngā vi e nai, ei, ine tai tangata. Ai e pupuhi e rei o Martin e te arama runga. Ine tai vieter, he tangata tu te te arma. Ia. A pera no to yo hore to pro con ro canariense. Ani ne canariense one ai si ko atiane. Ia ko topa tu aweri to no me irot. E ko ya ora ko tru ora ko veria vi. Ia. E iroto ko maurata papa no kio. abogado, o migratura, abogado, justicia militar, papa Aroa, tu está. En Aroa está en Yamaucoturu, ahora, y que Amurata Kakuru. Hiu ya, ahí van a ver tu tengatera y eran asesinos de Yahatura Capucao, no tiene un muy chorospe. Aquí que Amurata, que mata que tu oficina era. Maka morang ime weri to kia kamu wau ki pue ai mana ngamai mata kyo irang ime kamu ko pa ki pue ta na mana nga no ai werang e ki ja asesino ki jahat ine mo ya irang ime tu tangata señora abogado de justicia militar es serio me ayer que hago. ¿Y qué tiene que ver yo su abogado? Justicia militar. Y me muy dedicado, señora. Y pues no está Mario, me desaparece, ahora muy buena. Y me merqueado. Y que yo no. Acordo me conté a tu estudio, fueran todo medio, porque tenga taina. Y iba poco, 9 hijos. Y que pues como desaparece, porque es jara, que más mantiene. Y no, era y me era, te culpable cuya. Alfonso Ineta es culpa. Pía no, un papá y la carta. Y ya, tata que no, tú ana, mraguaro, te gata ni hoy, te gata roro, come, uri, verero, y ve tu chulo, me guairía, pero y ne guairía. Ari me corua y chorana cuando hay carta mo y tres no ni hora ni que te harani farso que tres horas aquí me ya señora camuco cae no con miro con ne ya pues tu tía no hajo he corua rohiri amua eu goharu iro me ya tu Haru y medio uatua, desaparece ta Mario ni pone ahí, y un guía tu, es que ¿y por qué? Ana y medio uatua, ¿y por qué? Que me, jacarón ta no van a que mira señor, usted no es asesino, me pena, asesino, me pena porque tome que tenga inocente. Eran ahí me libré montes no, hariro me coe, primera crack. Todo que tú quiere, monte tu poco me desaparece wiki. Tai que me mojaron y me yo a tua. Que diga uno que yo tu harera, cumple me utak me ni hakribre ella, botai cumple ojo. Me desaparece tu poera, ay, que mira que ha. Y que al contrario, tu mana bueno, vean ahí me librió mote tangata o un teno, ni mato. Me da era crack. Cocote tangata no me desaparece y te atúa. Ya, que me maurata, que te acoge, cae, caro, tenemos tu buena naja, corregir. Y ne me llegaría a tu. Kagiri mera maguraru wau hakunga miriku eu no miriku roto hakno ai ja weri thoi hanga pera e eru pera eu ni roto e fuera ya y tú
son buenos solo para las construcciones de fuerza, ¿no? Eso no es así. Porque esas grandes estrategias tejidas y fijadas en los peinados, porque es que tenían un imaginario inmenso. Ahí tallar todo el recorrido de cada uno de esos, de cada uno de esos caminos en donde se daban las huidas. Una mujer iba tejiéndole a la otra mujer en la cabeza cuando se sentaban a descansar. Mira, salimos así, lo iban tejiendo. Que esos peinados no solamente por por la belleza, porque la gente quiere, que no. No, esos peinados tienen unos grandes significados. Pero además de eso, habían unas trenzas donde en esas trenzas, las negras que la tenían como para explotar el oro, ahí en esas trenzas se entregaba una parte del oro, pero en esas trenzas estaba guardada otros granos de oro. Pero además muchas semillas que ellas conocieron, muchos árboles que ellos conocieron en esas diferentes fincas o en esas haciendas, las semillas ellas se las trajeron guardadas en esas trenzas. Claro, y eso es.
Fate had directed me to the dead, but all I could see was death. Shells of lost dreams approached, and I wept again. They surrounded me, attracted to the blood, the sacrificial blood dripping from my fingers. The flames crackled, the embers glowed. So many faces known, so many comrades lost. So many faces. Ashamed, I looked away. Were these my enemies I killed, who now befriend me, or my comrades? I could not tell. And suddenly, out from the gloom of masses, Tiresias arrived. What pitying softness he poured on me. He spoke of my journey and my heart, the hardships and the losses to come, and the carnage that had been. As quietly as he arrived, he was swallowed again. The blood had gone, my time had run, and the dead had faded once more.
I think it's a shit to threaten other countries with the military, and the oil stuff is about piracy.
Piracy in what way?
In which is you're exploiting resources from somewhere that it isn't yours. And in some other way, I believe there's a fact about the conflict needed to be in it has to be. It's like kind of British needs the conflict like needed some other to call an enemy, and Argentinians need it as a symbol of rights. Maybe both countries needed a threat to become powerful itself in different ways. The image, it's useful for the population, you know, because we look at our governments and we say like, okay, it's very good because they are taking the peaceful way of doing stuff, you know, going to ONU and all that bullshit.
What happened to you during the war? Because you had a position of authority and responsibility.
Yeah, well, they took over the airport and that was my job gone. And then they asked me to keep the local air service going. I said, no way. I said, you're hundreds of your troops out on the ground. They don't know what those aircraft are. And the pilots, if they asked the pilots to carry on, they wouldn't, because they could easily be shot down. And then 3 weeks later, I was taken over to the other arm, West Falkland, with some other people, and kept under house arrest. There was no communication whatsoever to Stanley. We secretly listened to a radio to listen to BBC to find out what was happening in the war.
But that must have been awful.
Oh yeah, it was pretty worrying.
But it must have been even worse for your wife.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And your children,
yeah.
because they would not have known.
No, we had no knowledge at all what was happening. No, that was very, very stressful news to other people there, the same situation. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
There is a lot of things that war can do to you. I couldn't sleep for I think 2 or 3 months. can't get sleep, and you think about it over and over again, what I could done better. I really felt that I'm a different guy. I didn't like the taste of food, couldn't sleep, couldn't have sex. A lot of things that it was different 3 months ago. What happened? So I understand that it's war, and I just realized, understood that it will be with me. It will be with me all my life probably. And I don't want to lose my life. I'm young, I like to live. So how do I keep going in life and bring back the passion to be a funny guy again? And I realized that I just need to live with it. It's okay. It was a war, it was difficult, but it's okay. It was my job. I didn't do anything wrong. It was the best thing to do, probably. So it's okay, and I realized, and slowly, and I thought about it, all of the things that happened again and again, and I realized that it's okay, it's not that bad.
That is me. You, that is us. We stop within our machines going round till finally we are blinded again.
The processes of becoming a nation, but also the processes of how the notion is being perpetuated and constructed. And partially it is being done with global education and with the education system controlled by the Ministry of Education, usually in a central government, which constructs an agenda and constructs a plan, teaching plan, which includes historical aspect.
But that's true for lots of places, the way in which we mythologize the past.
Exactly, mythologize the past and also refer to some golden age in the past, to the times where we were big and great, and this is being done in Poland as well constantly. There are many other aspects as well. I think a big part of Latin American nationalism is football, that actually helps to create and maintain the borders between countries where, my neighbor, he's already in Brazil and he is a Brazilian because the difference is we just are fans of different football teams. So, because otherwise, why would you feel more distance to the guy living on the next side of the streets in Pedro Juan Caballero and more close to someone living in Chaco? You need something that really makes the difference and unites you with the whole concept of a country. In Paraguay it's 6 million, but if you think, for example, about Poland, 40 million people, that's an abstract idea that I'm part of a community of 40 million people, more than I'm part of someone who lives in Germany that's closer than the other side of Poland, for example.
It's up to humanity, to keep whatever their house, their community, their country, this planet, in a tight, safe zone. You know what I mean? I mean, we're screwing up, the whole world. And Rapa Nui, it went to a phase that it was minus 100. You know what I mean? It was not food, people dying. The only people that survived were 100 and how many? 12. That's right. You see? 112. So that's why we came down from that 15,000 people from slavery, from raping, from killing. I mean, I say that's from the how do you call, the whalers that used to go and kill whales and all that stuff. They will come here and take people. It went down to 112, and that's, that's almost nothing.
It really is.
It is nothing. It really is. So the message is just like we gotta, be conscious about what can happen. Like you said, this keeps going like this, keeps going like that, keeps going like this.
So there are lessons to be learned here.
You know, the fact that the Rapa Nuian people cut all the trees down.
That's right.
Yeah, and they needed to have the trees to make boats.
That's right.
And they cut them all down.
That's right. And they got to 112. Huh?
And we're doing the same thing with our, you know, with our planet.
Mata ki mai ra koi ito umahatuena kiuru atu hai hanga nei ki a koe Mata ki mai ra koi ito umahatuena kiuru atu hai hanga nei
Here I think I've learned not to worry so much about things. If it doesn't work today, maybe it will work tomorrow. If it doesn't work, let's fix it. You know, here people don't get so upset when things go wrong, or that is one thing that I can feel, you know, talking to friends back home, family back home. They worry about everything. And this is while they have everything, you know. They don't lack anything, but they worry about those little things that they might not have. Yesterday, my drill broke. So here you can actually go and fix them. So I went to the guy to fix it. And then we started to talk about this, because he asked me, where are you from? I'm from Sweden. Oh, how is Sweden? Blah, blah. And I said, well, it's very rich economically, but it's very poor for your soul.
Is that what he said or you said?
No, I said that to him. And then we started to talk about that. And I mean, this is a poor guy. I mean, anywhere else in the world, people would feel sorry for a guy like that, you know? They make so little money, it's a shame. But he's a happy guy. And he agreed with me that of course you need to have the time to be able to sit down with a friend if he comes by, to have a tereré for half an hour. I mean, how can you live any other way? That's the way they see it here. And I see a lot of that now also, that the value of treating your soul and your heart is, you can't put a monetary value on it. But we really try to do it, and we do it in Europe.
Nós fomos para uma comunidade cuna na selva, ficamos 3 dias, 2 comunidades diferentes. Foi incrível porque eu vi um povo completamente diferente do meu, com costumes, com forma de pensar, de ver um mundo totalmente diferente da minha, e que também acreditavam no mesmo Deus. E existia algo em comum, existia uma fé, uma base em comum entre nós. E eu nem falava o idioma deles, nem falava a mesma língua, o Kuna, mas quando a gente cantava, a gente percebia que existia algo em comum e que nós éramos irmãos. Assim como eu tinha irmãos na Colômbia, na Venezuela, no Caribe, eu tinha irmãos nessa comunidade. E a gente podia perceber a unidade mesmo com eles. Era muito bonito. Sim, as crianças também era bem legal, porque era mais fácil de se comunicar com elas. Tinham momentos no Rio que todos tomávamos banho juntos e elas me ensinavam palavras. Elas apontavam e falavam aço, nariz, aço, boca, caia. Elas me ensinaram muitas palavras só apontando, e a gente consegue se comunicar muito fácil com as crianças. As crianças gostam muito de interagir, é muito legal. Quem eu mais conversei foi com as crianças. E a gente nem precisa de palavras, só dançar, eles imitam, eu danço assim, eles fazem a mesma coisa.
You didn't tell me this yesterday.
É muito mais fácil interagir com as crianças, elas são muito abertas e muito curiosas. Os adultos eram mais tímidos.
That sounds so amazing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about...
Oh!
Well, what I realized when I was traveling around Bolivia, I was traveling alone for like 2 months, and I saw this kind of poverty. There were like very like poor farmers, you know, like in the middle of nowhere, with their goats or you know, but they didn't look to me as poor people.
Really?
And while I started get close to big cities, is where I kind of saw them like this is where misery is staying. You understand the point? It's like if you are not in near a big city, because there's no contrast. So if I don't know. Like in the middle of nowhere, there's bad clothing, people going around eating, but they are okay, kind of. I believe hard life, but I don't know, with dignity.
Yeah.
But near the big cities, they were kind of miserable because of the counterpoint, because there's a lot of people that has cars and apartments and good clothing and so the natives were like, I don't know, like humbles or.
I'd never thought about this before. It's in a way by comparing that.
Yeah, it's like I started looking at them and oh, this is bad, this is miserable people. But when you see this like the same person in a different context, they are like I don't know. So that's weird to me, because if I think about becoming poor, like okay, I don't have anything, I don't have a job, I don't have anything, I wouldn't stay in a big city, yeah.
But you know,
I would try to go to, I don't know.
Leaning into the evening, the sun's going down, and the world is waking up. I watch a family glide to an island, away from their village, away from their life, to spend this moment. When the sun finally sees the moon and is destroyed by its own longing. The sun melts and the clouds are unmoved. I look, and my own lonesomeness stares back. But I am gone. Home now only exists within my dreams, and they are sculpting my shape. Remembering less each day, yet closer to my destination, my memories are crumbling with the sun. The clouds dominate the landscape, affecting the world, oblivious of their own changing. The winds sculpt their shape and direct them, and I am floating with them, looking at a family. As with the clouds, pulled and changed by the winds, I am made by these memories, and like the clouds I am powerless. I drift to nowhere, and I have no more control of my shape as the clouds do of theirs. My memories are pushed and pulled and stretched by this voyage. Am I now the winds, the sun, or am I the clouds?
Ah. Jump. Ah.
Yeah, we're sat here now, and we're surrounded by pasture. There's cows. There's factories. There's milk plants. And you think, what this must have been like when you first got here, just jungle.
People that haven't been here during that time can't really imagine it. And some of them today, even native people, they don't believe it. No puede ser. It can't be, they say. But it was. A cleared land was nothing. There was no cleared land at that time. We started right from the road in. The other family, the second family that came, started just beside there and came in. Later we cut a road, a path through the jungle here. I remember working for weeks with an axe and a chainsaw and a machete, and we'd cut wood and we'd move it off just so we had a path to drive through.
And how old were you then?
12.
12. You were 12 working the axe or a chainsaw?
Yeah, trying to. My older brother was able then.
Yeah.
So my older brother did a lot more of that, but I helped wherever I could.
I like the trying to.
So I grew up in a family with 15 children. And until I was quite old, we never had a big enough clear space that we could even play ball in. Except out beside the main highway, there was a little space there that was cleared, or we did clear it, beside our neighbor's house. And I remember the first few years when we did go play ball there, it was so rare, especially like softball or something, so rare. A bus that happened to go more than once, buses that went through started looking, and then they stopped and just sat there on the road and watched a while.
Communication way back in the 60s, 70s. Prior to that, we had telephones for an hour or two a day, overseas telephones.
Really, is that all? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that within the island, because not that many people would have had telephones.
No, you're right. No.
You'd almost sort of, if you had to have a message to someone, it would be like almost like a relay. You'd ask somebody who then asked somebody,
Yes, right.
and
right.
would eventually get to where it was going.
And telephone systems around the farms. There was 2 telephone lines going to Stanley, connecting up to about 20 sheep farms. And each one had its own code. There might be 3 long rings, 2 short rings. Amazing. But the problem is, everybody in the intermediate lines listened in anyway. You could hear the clicks. You could hear the clicks when they're picking up the receiver. So you knew one.
No sort of private love affairs over the phone line.
and there was an HF radio link, which every morning during the week, called Doctor's Hour, the doctor would go on and talk to the farm manager and say, oh, so-and-so, Mrs., she's not feeling too well. And she must be going to have a baby, or they've got one. And it was not private. Everybody had the radio receivers on, he's probably been drinking too much, that's whatever. You wouldn't believe it.
Different things, different
well, and because both my parents weren't from that village, they were all even from Dorset. They're from Manchester and Oxford, and I felt like a foreigner, even though I was there from the age of 1 to 18. I didn't feel like a local, because unless you had your grandparents and all your aunties in the village, you weren't local.
Really?
Maybe that was just a personal sort of problem I had. But yes, I definitely had this sense of the world outside the village that needed discovering. And my father did a lot of travelling and always talked about it, and I knew that would be part of my life at some point. He lived in Guatemala for 2 years when he was 25. Yeah, and quite dangerous at the time. Yeah.
What was it like growing up in an Amish community?
It was really was great. Lots of love to go around.
Yeah.
We were well cared for. It was a very interesting life. Very close to nature, and a strong sense of community.
It always seems sort of, I can only imagine, that those sort of tight communities where there's lots of young people around the same age, and that sense of being together must be a very sort of reassuring existence.
Yes, everything we did was together.
Yeah.
Like, I hardly had friends outside of church. It was just almost non-existent because we had enough to go around, and we were very used to making do with what we had.
I guess there's the negative. It can be quite closed to other existences.
Yes, very much. And it's very difficult to experience a different way of living as well as living within the Amish Mennonite community. It's just the two lives just simply don't mix very well.
That's interesting.
But I would say the reason that I decided that I chose to leave the Amish Mennonite community was mostly because of extremist ideas about scripture and biblical literacy, and the very dogmatic people kind of drove me away. If it wouldn't have been for that, I would have never looked for anything different, because other than the extremist religion aspect of it, it really is a good life.
Bueno, yo creo que una de las felicidades mías es, en primera instancia, haber nacido en este lugar, en este espacio, y de igual con una cultura que a diferencia de las demás comunidades no ha decaído en su totalidad, y una comunidad que es muy solidaria, donde tenemos una ventaja, y es que todos los palenqueros nos conocemos, y eso nos ha permitido que nosotros hayamos podido mantener y sostener toda una cultura. Nosotros, bueno, con el tema de la globalización han habido algunas manifestaciones que se han debilitado, pero que nosotros diariamente luchamos por que éstas se mantengan. Entonces, yo creo que mi mayor placer es ser palenquero. De hecho, poco me gusta salir de Palenque. Bueno, cuando estoy fuera de Palenque siento que estoy digamos que en otro mundo, porque estoy en un ambiente totalmente diferente a mi cotidianidad, ¿ya? Es más el aire, el oxígeno que respira uno es totalmente diferente, la tranquilidad que se siente en Palenque es totalmente diferente a los otros lugares de Colombia y del mundo en general, porque mi ombligo, como dicen mis padres, está sembrado en Palenque, y en Palenque aspiro a morir en mi tierra natal.
No, horairi nei at kompania e toro ai. E tokero ai te Rapa Nui, pero itirahi e o mei no Rapa Nui. Vanang pa to pa kuia pa ke fe o ira. Ki pe peneiro at no toki ma mo e no ahat. Engaro ai ma tu vanang ai. Aquí to papá kakare no porque Rapa Nui eta no kato eta hirua mamo ta ura manga yo trago familia engaro no ai matu banang er kiranga nu ya o sea eu por ejemplo me quieto papá kakare no mane aquí pero meta ino moto este mamo manga ta nga pokipa familia Ine koto kerahi pai mamo pai o te ono, ine koto kerahi. no, ai tai, me tai no hangi família pa ta nga po.
Hora era que eu tipo de companhia quoti tahia, hora era com coho a hea de cambio irunga te henua né. Co apa au a o.
No, peor.
Hea hai.
Porque yo soy de compañía de años 59. Así por ahí como era, ¿no? Ya. Yo era mainé. Entrega para que te tire, que te arma y vaya. Ya, te arma pa, te tire y ne caí y te manejan y te.
Oiga, mujer, contémplame mi dicha, no me abandones por ti mi corazón. Mira, mujer, estate tranquila, yo sufro mucho y para siempre este dolor. Mira, mujer, estate tranquila, yo sufro mucho y para siempre este dolor. Ay, dámelo, mamita, dámelo. Ay, dámelo, mamita, dámelo. Por tu amorcito, dámelo, que me voy a morir, dámelo. Ay, 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 dámelo. Dámelo, nena, dámelo. Y dámelo, mi hermana, dámelo. Por tu amorcito, dámelo. Por un beso que me dé.
Siendo que uno aquí en Palenque vive a diario con la música, porque la música es una manifestación cultural que transversaliza la vida del palenquero, desde el nacimiento hasta la muerte. Entonces, en cualquier espacio hay música, o sea, eso te conlleva a tú sentir una conexión directa con ella, ¿ya? Y pues bueno, al tocarla hay otra doble conexión, porque tú la sientes y la tocas, pero además yo también soy constructor de instrumentos tradicionales, tambor alegre, tambora, llamador, todo eso se relaciona y hace aún mayor esa conexión que tengo con la música, porque además de la música nosotros transmitimos ese conocimiento que tenemos en la mente, en el corazón, ¿ya? La música es ese hilo conductor que nos permite expresar todo eso que tiene Palenque, todo eso que nosotros queremos decir. Lo decimos a través de la tocada del tambor o a través de nuestras canciones, ya sean en lengua o en castellano. Entonces hay una relación.
Amorcito, dámelo, que me voy a morir, dámelo. Yo comí de la verbena, como yo la música, mitad. Como yo aprendí con mi tío de edad de 8 años la música. Así que la música significa una cosa muy grande para mí. Muy grande, muy grande, muy grande. He tocado con toda clase de música. Porque he tocado con los vallenatos, he tocado con el bullerengue de acá, he tocado con la gaita, he tocado negro y bailé negro, y he tocado con banda y con mi sexteto, que nunca le he olvidado, nunca. Y comencé con ese sexteto de edad de 8 años, y de edad de 8 años estoy tocando con mi sexteto. Salgo para afuera y siempre regreso aquí a mi casa. Y eso hace uno alegrar el corazón.
Sí.
La música.
La música es lo que lo hace feliz.
La música me hace feliz. Y la...
Well, Rapa Nui is like it's a sacred place, you know. It's a sacred place. It's my home, not just a home where I live. You know, it's a place that I have to take care of. You know, it's not just a home that I go sleep. It's a place that I have to take care of because of my ancestors, my grandfather, myself, my children. You know, it's not the sense of a home that I go sleep. It's a home in the sense that in the back of my mind, I have to take care of. And when you have that in your mind, when you're in Amsterdam, in Italy, and whatever, you know, that's why everybody comes back. You can travel and meet this girl in that place and all that's so nice. But in the back of your mind, you're set. There's a place that you have to take care of. Place and people all together.
So late teen years, popularity and respect was important, and I found the wrong way to get that, and that was hanging out with a group of unruly folks and drinking a lot and doing drugs and partying and took the pistol, all of that stuff that I mentioned before, and so I really needed to turn that around and do something very different and really get back to the person that I actually was. My dad is probably, he's one of the most social people that I know. And so to see his interactions with people throughout my entire life, I see that as being, I'm a lot like him in that respect. But I started using that more after my sentence, and that was my way of kind of turning it around. I didn't really need to portray this really tough guy image, and I didn't really need to be an asshole to people, and I would just be that kind person that was genuinely interested in other people, and we talked about me growing up in environments where helping other people was also important, and a major part of my life and growing up. And so those are things that I really got back to when at the very beginning of incarceration. So I found opportunities to really help people, and in doing so, I'm happy. I walk down the street here and say hello to someone, and that puts a smile on people's face, and that makes me happy. So during this period of incarceration, I had 2 years under my belt in college, and so I think a lot of people looked up to me for that reason. I was a college athlete, and I think a lot of people looked up to me for that reason. One of my first jobs was in the schoolhouse, where a lot of people didn't even have their GEDs. And so I assisted people in studying and helping them, and those are all things that brought joy and satisfaction and happy to my life, and I gained respect and popularity by being just the person that I am. And I think it's reinforced, every time I have an opportunity to do something for the well-being and the good of other people, and I think that's why my profession is perfect. It's perfect for me.
Me hace feliz ver el amanecer palenquero. Sí. Pararme en la puerta con una escoba y las demás vecinas, ¡ay, la amanecía! Y el café, ¡ay, yo no hice café hoy, no he tenido con qué hacer café! ¡Ay, mija, bueno, ven! El pocillo de café y el pan. Me hace feliz que todos los que les toque cruzar por la puerta de mi casa me saluden. Eso me hace ser feliz. Cuando una de tantas personas no me saluda, me siento mal, porque eso quiere decir que algún problema hay. Y hay que resolverlo y hay que solucionarlo. Eso no quiere decir que aquí algunos no estemos con problemas. Eso no quiere decir. Pero la mayoría de los palenqueros, y específicamente Solvay, eso específicamente en las primeras horas desde que nos levantamos, eso me hace ser muy feliz. Me hace ser feliz que mis hijas, todas mis 5 hijas, tenemos que correr, levantarnos, ayudarnos una con la otra para cada quien agarrar su rumbo.
I remember when we were recently married, we lived on our own property, we had jungle within 30 meters of the house. And I remember quite a number of times we had popcorn planted by hand between the house and the jungle. We'd see the monkeys, a whole herd of them. They were in the trees and they'd come down and pick and crawl up a popcorn plant and break the ear off, and they'd peel some husks back and pitch it over their shoulder, hold it there with one hand, then up in the tree. Then they'd straddle a branch up in the tree, and they went like this and pulled all the husks off, and then they went and ate it off. They turned it. They didn't go the lengthwise and go like that, but they turned like this until they had the corn all eaten off, and then they didn't let it fall. They took it in their hand, pitched it as far as they could, run down the tree and get another one. And I wasn't hurting for the popcorn so much. We enjoyed that scenery so much. A number of times we were doing dishes, and whenever I had time, I'd help my wife do dishes. We'd stand there doing dishes and watch the monkeys eat popcorn. And those are things you just don't see anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a thing of the past.
But sometimes I feel like it's a decision, you know? That you decide in one, you are walking in your life, and sometimes you say, I want to feel in love. And the person is there you fell in love with. Because you need it, you know, you need to say I love you, you need to say I want to hug you, I want to be with you, I want to have dinner with you, I want to wake up with you. And sometimes you are like, I hate myself, I just want to be alone, you know, I don't want to see anybody, I don't want to share anything more with you. And I don't know, but sometimes you are not looking and it happens. Can be, it's not like that, but to be accepted, I think, is the most important. I never realized that until I think until
¿Cómo se llama?
Hola.
My wall's now behind me, call, like a lover's pleading, so I'll turn back and fall into your arms once more. It's unthinkable not to face you, but I must leave this darkness before I turn, or I will lose you forever. Curiosity is the ending and the beginning. Once that box is open, once set free, our terrors will wound. Don't be afraid. They can't hurt us now. Their pain has passed, the wreckage done. Great fabricated fantasies, cities with endless skies, have all fallen. Facades cracked, empty echoes boom, and saying nothing. Illusions shattered, lay strewn at our feet. Our lands, these visions, all gone. We won't encounter these things now, unless we bring them along in our souls, unless our souls set them up in front of us. Let them go. Leave them with the dead. I now sail, Chiron's oval satisfied, and my debt paid. As I set out for my nowhere lands, I hope this journey is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Arriving there is what I am destined for. I will not hurry my journey. Better it lasts for years, wealthy, with all I would have gained on the way. not expecting that it will make me rich. And if I find her poor, she would not have fooled me. For as wise as I would have become, so full of experience, I will finally understand what all our nowhere lands mean.